We all think we get what a tax is. It's that money the government takes, right? Seems simple enough. But what if I told you that the way most of us use that word is, well, legally speaking, completely wrong? And that little mistake, it actually has huge consequences for public policy, for international law, for pretty much everything.
And look, I know what you're thinking. That sounds a little dramatic, right? Incorrectly. But in the world of law and high finance, getting the words right is everything. It turns out that our casual use of the word tax creates this massive blind spot, and it kind of hides how governments really bring in their money.
So here's the thing. The heart of the issue is that we use tax as this big catch-all term for every single payment we make to the government. And when we do that, we completely lose the crucial differences between them. Now, this isn't just about being a stickler for words. It has real-world effects, like when you hear a politician arguing about a tax hike, but what they're really talking about is raising a fee for a very specific service. That's a totally different ballgame.
And hey, this isn't just my opinion. The legal scholar Ciro Giovannioli hits the nail on the head here. He points out that the English language itself kinda sets us up to fail. This one quote is really our key to unlocking the whole picture. So if tax isn't the right word for everything, then what is?
Well, the answer comes from the world of comparative law. The correct, all-encompassing legal term for these compulsory payments isn't taxes, it's tributes. Now, I know it's probably not a word you use every day, but trust me, it's the absolute key to making all of this make sense.
This right here, this is the exact mental shift we all need to make. On the left, you've got what we all thought was true. On the right, you have the legal reality. We're basically moving from a fuzzy, messy idea to a super precise legal framework. Okay, here's a super simple way to think about it. Saying all tributes are taxes is literally like saying all fruit are apples. It's just not true. Tributes are the entire fruit basket, and a tax is just one type of fruit sitting inside it.
So here's the official legal definition. A tribute is any kind of revenue the government collects because a law says they have to. It is the true super category. So, what other kinds of fruit are in this tribute basket?
Okay, so it turns out there are actually 4 distinct members of this tribute family. And honestly, once you understand these 4, you've basically mastered this whole topic. So, let's meet them.
Now, this is where it gets really cool. The key to telling these apart is looking at the trigger and the core feature. A tax gets triggered just by an economic fact, like you earned income, and that money goes into a big pot for general spending. But a fee, that's totally different. You only pay a fee when you ask for a specific service, like getting your trash collected. There's a direct link. Then you have contributions for a collective good, and fiscal monopolies, which is just revenue from stuff the state sells, like lottery tickets.
So let's just hammer this point home because it's the crucial takeaway. Out of those 4 types, only the very first one is what we should properly call a tax. That bill for waste collection, that's a fee. That special payment for urban development, that's a contribution. They are just fundamentally different things. All right, now that we've separated the true taxes from the rest of the pack, let's zoom in on them. Because the way we classify taxes, the stuff we're about to see, it only applies to this one category, not to fees or contributions. And that's another spot where people get tripped up all the time. The biggest, most fundamental split when it comes to true taxes is whether they're direct or indirect. It's pretty simple, really. A direct tax is a levy on what you have, your wealth, your income. An indirect tax, on the other hand, is a levy on what you do, like when you buy something or transfer property. And this table just lays it all out so clearly. You see, income and wealth taxes, those are direct. They're tied right to what you own, your financial capacity. But things like a sales tax or VAT, those are indirect. They tax an action, which is seen as an indirect signal of your ability to pay.
Okay, so you might be thinking, this is interesting academic stuff, but why does it actually matter? Well, this is why. Because the huge international organizations that basically shape our global economy, like the OECD and the European Union, they build all their rules and all their statistics on these exact distinctions. Think about it. When you see a report from the OECD comparing tax burdens across different countries, you have to know that they are only talking about true taxes, not all those other tributes. Getting this right is absolutely essential if you work in international finance, law, or policy. And it all comes down to this one critical rule they have. Quid pro quo just means something for something. A tax has no direct quid pro quo. You pay it and the money goes into a general fund. But that fee for your driver's license, you pay the fee, you get a license. That's a direct quid pro quo, and that's exactly why the OECD does not count it as a tax. And what's interesting is the EU pretty much sees it the same way. They draw a really clear line between a tax, no direct benefit for you, and a charge or a fee, which is directly tied to a service. They also use the term duty for some specific indirect taxes, like on customs. And understanding this helps you see why they're so focused on standardizing things like that. It's an indirect tax that impacts the entire single market.
So, after all that, what's the practical takeaway? When do you use which word? Well, think of this table as your personal cheat sheet. If you're doing a deep dive into certain legal systems, tribute is the hyper-precise word to use. But for most professional work, reading OECD stats, talking to a lawyer, tax is the common term, but it specifically means that one category we talked about. The trick is just knowing which one you're really talking about.
All right, let's wrap this up and bring it all home. We started with a word we all thought we knew inside and out, and we've landed at a much sharper, more powerful understanding. You now have the linguistic toolkit to look at public finance with a whole new level of clarity.
So, if you remember nothing else, remember these 4 things. First, tribute is the big umbrella term. Second, a tax is just one type, defined by that lack of a direct benefit, which is how the big players like the OECD see it. Third, fees and contributions are not taxes because you're getting something specific back. And finally, getting this terminology right isn't just for show. It's absolutely fundamental for accurate professional work.
And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. We've just seen how one single, imprecise word can totally warp our understanding of how public finance works. It really makes you wonder, what other huge, important realities are hiding from us in plain sight, all because we're using the wrong words?